Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto had limitless chakra in the Chunin Exams? Part 2. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's begin. Chapter 3, Training. It has been 3 days since Naruto had started the next part of his training, and 1 week since the preliminary rounds had ended. Naruto had been correct in the assumption that he would be dead on his feet after every day of training. When he came home, he would have just enough strength in him to make and dispel a shadow clone. This was so he can relay his experience to any shadow clones he had around. Through the course of the days, Jiraiya was metaphorically and literally cramming information in his head. Naruto never received any rest, especially since his sensei knew how much endurance he had. The moment he was finished one subject, they would move on to the next. If Naruto never understood a spoken explanation, he learned by being demonstrated on. Naruto had to admit that while the lessons hurt, he was learning faster because of it. The only part of the day that didn't have any practical lessons were seals. Jiraiya told Naruto to work on his handwriting before he can even begin making seals, so at this point the class was only theoretical. Jiraiya also taught under the belief of starting from the foundation and working your way up, so Naruto got to revisit and properly learn many things from the academy that he didn't care enough to remember the first time. Besides his training with Arrow Sennin, Naruto's independent sessions were bearing much fruit. Naruto was already making substantial progress before, but when the training with Jiraiya was added, his progress was multiplied. The clones working with weapons, like shuriken and kunai, continued increasing speed, precision, and accuracy. Naruto discovered from that group that they found a way to apply the shadow clone just you to the shuriken and kunai, where they could just make copies of the weapons. They even found a way to do this after the projectile has already been thrown. Naruto had learned a lot of the jutsus that he copied from the library, only really having trouble with the higher tier ones. Naruto also had assigned clones to learn how to do fire and wind jutsus with as few seals as possible. Something which Naruto found out was possible from Arrow Sennin's teachings. Naruto chakra control increased day by day, which allowed him to improve all across the board, but medical ninjutsu and genjutsu was still improbable for him. After the first day of his new lessons with his sensei, Naruto decided to add a new group of clones that would only work on his calligraphy for seals. As a result, his handwriting was unrecognizable from his academy days. Naruto was even on the final part of his fire affinity training, which he found surprising considering it wasn't even his main element. The only setbacks he had during training, strangely enough, was in his wind affinity training, which he was supposed to have a strong affinity for. He was still on the first exercise, and he still didn't have a clue on how to complete it. Naruto had done many things with the leaf, even some things that could be passed off as a tear down the middle, but he was never able to get his chakra to cleanly cut through the leaf. Naruto already made up his mind to find help if he didn't get any results in the next few days. The one lesson Naruto learnt best from all this was that shadow clones were truly bullshit. He could get hours and hours of experience in anything he wanted, and because they were clones, he didn't have to worry about harming himself. It turns out that Mizuki was even a better teacher than Iruka. Currently Naruto was trying out a new training routine that he was planning on doing once every week. Naruto was standing in the center of about 100 clones, that were standing in a wide circle around him. All the clones were standing in fighting position, ready to launch off their feet in a moment's notice. The original Naruto cracked his neck, and rotated his arms before he got in a similar position as his clones. Let's go. One by one each clone started to run towards Naruto and tried to attack him. Naruto would block, parry, counter, or dodge every hit. One clone would come with an overhead flying kick, and Naruto would spin his body in a way where it would miss, and come around with a kick of his own. Another comes from behind Naruto trying to attempt to attack at a blind spot, but before a hit could land Naruto flips over the clone, putting one hand on the clone's back to help the maneuver. Naruto gripped the clone's shirt in the process of the flip and threw the clone at another one who was preparing to do a jutsu, dispelling both of them. The clones switched up and started attacking in twos, making Naruto have to work harder than before. From an outsider's perspective, it was clear that the original was faster than the army of clones by a good amount, despite that Naruto was starting to get glancing blows and cuts. A clone, seeing that Naruto was wearing down, decided to finish it in one blow. The clone quickly made a bird seal. Wind style, air bullets. 3 balls of pressurized air shot out of the clone's mouth towards his maker. Naruto dispatched the clone he was fighting, and tuned towards the incoming projectiles while going through seals. Earth style, mud wall. A portion of the ground shot up to intercept the bullets of air, and when they collided, they exploded into rubble and debris, covering the area with rocks and smoke. Naruto did a simple wind just U to clear the smoke, and paused at what he saw next. All of the clones which were left, which was about 20-something, were in the air facing Naruto, flashing through the same just U. Wind style, drilling air bullets. They cried in unison. Then a countless number of expelled air balls filled the air, and they were all headed for Naruto at a frightening speed. Boom! A large explosion happened in the middle of the field, the resounding noise resonating through the air. The smoke from the combined blast took several moments to clear by itself, all of the clones waiting watching the impact point without lowering their guards. When it was visible enough for them to see, they peered in. Now where once the original stood, there was just a big crater, that looked as if multiple bombs were set off to dig it, and at the very bottom of the hole there was one small man-sized hole, partially hidden by dirt and rocks. What the he, one of the clones said, but before it could finish it was interrupted by a loud voice. Over here, idiots, said a figure that launched in the air from the forest. The airborne ninja made a tiger seal and inhaled widely. Fire style, great fireball jutsu. Exhale. A massive orb of roaring flames burst out of Naruto's mouth, flying towards where the clones were gathered. Before they could move, the attack hit the clones. Boom! Erupting into a magnificent explosion of fire. Naruto landed in a crouch on the ground, breathing hard from the exertion of his latest activity. He stood up from the ground, brilliant crimson light bathing him, and started to stretch. You got all that, breathed out Naruto towards the treetops of a few trees. Up in the tree, several clones sitting on branches gave Naruto the thumbs up. Naruto had thought of the idea for the exercise he was currently using after trying to run a couple of his laps with the weights off. He ended up tripping countless times, and crashed into a couple trees. Naruto was then able to figure out that he did successfully gain more speed, it was just that he wasn't used to moving at them. He knew that this would hinder him if he ever decided to take off his weights in a fight, and decided that he needed a way to get used to going fast, and he came up with the 1 against 100 exercise. He would summon 100 clones while he had weights on, then he would take the weights off and fight against all of them. He also had a couple clones observing the entire thing from afar. Naruto planned to do this once a week, so that he would feel comfortable when he got rid of his bands. But Naruto only completed the first part of the exercise. You ready to go again, boss? One of the clones said. Naruto was going to keep sparring until he couldn't move anymore. He was determined to be prepared for all situations. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Poof. 100 clones surrounded Naruto once again. Sai, let's do this, then Naruto charged. Later that day, Naruto was lying in a heap after one of his and Arrow Sennin's sparring matches, like always. Unlike always, Jiraiya didn't immediately go off searching for the nearest bathhouse, and stayed behind to talk to Naruto for a few moments. Hey Naruto, Jiraiya said to the pile of meat that was once Naruto. I realized today during our sealing lesson that I have never seen you right before, so I don't really have a clue how long it would take until you were ready to do Fuinjutsu. Groaned Naruto. Jiraiya ignored Naruto and kept on talking. So in light of that fact, I decided to finally see now before it slips my mind and I never remember. Moans of pain was the only thing the Toad Sage received in response. Well, here's some paper, said Jiraiya, pulling out paper from his pouch, still ignoring Naruto's condition. And here's something to write with. He also pulled out an inked brush and held both items in front of Naruto's limp body. Naruto didn't do anything for a few moments, but then he took the two objects and started to do something on the paper. After he was done, he threw them both on the ground. Jiraiya walked over to the sheet and picked it up. He looked at what was on the paper with scrutiny. While you need to work on your artwork, your strokes and brushes are near flawless. Complimented Jiraiya. On the paper was a drawing of a deformed Jiraiya with horns sticking from his actual head, instead of his forehead protector. Underneath the drawing were the kanji for Akuma. Anyone who saw the picture would have to admit that while the drawing was crude, it was still elegantly done. It's practically unheard of for someone to have this good of handwriting starting off, huh? You really are full of surprises. Jiraiya said, chuckling. Tomorrow come with some sealing supplies, you are going to need them for your fuinjutsu lesson. With that, Jiraiya stalked away, presumably out to find some more research. Naruto was still in the same position he was in 10 minutes ago, a bloody lump. Ooh. The next morning Naruto was walking into Higarashi's weapon shop. On his way to the training ground he trained with Jiraiya at. Ring. Hello, Mr. Higurashi. Naruto called out. He noticed that the store was empty. I'll be out in just a minute, shouted the owner in response from the back. True to his word, only a moment later did Ishii emerge from the back door. He was wearing gloves, had on goggles, and was greasy, so Naruto assumed he was doing some work. Oh Naruto, you're back already. Did you already need your things replaced, or are you here for a different reason? I'm actually here to get something new, Naruto responded. How many blank sealing scrolls and papers do you have? A lot of them, we order them in bulk but not too many ninja buy them, I was considering reducing the amount we order. Naruto shook his head and pulled out Gama-chan. No need to do that, I want to buy every one you have, he said, pulling out the required amount. While this solves the problem of my current stock of sealing materials, what you just ordered should last you a while, and there would be no need for you to come back and but more when I restock. Trust me, Naruto replied. I will go through everything quick. Okay. I also need all the brushes and ink you have as well. Whatever, it's your money. Ishii went and gathered everything asked for, and rung it up. When Naruto saw the price on the cash register he almost started crying on the spot. He was thankful that he learned to save every cent that he could at a young age. At least it's for a good cause, whimpered Naruto in his head. Sigh, here you go. Now that I think about it, I am probably going to need a storage scroll for all this. Once they was finished with the dilemma of sealing everything, they was finally set to go. Pleasure doing business with you kid, Ishii said. Matter fact, I have a couple propositions for you if you are willing to hear them, and they all involve making a little cash. Naruto, who had just witnessed the death of his wallet, was eager to hear about anything that could his funds. Sure, I'm up to hear whatever you got to say. Since you're doing sealing, if you bring in some explosive tags and storage scrolls, I will pay you for them. I can never have too many of those, especially since they are one of the products most in demand. Naruto knew that with the lessons he was currently receiving, coupled with all of his clones, he could probably make a pretty penny with this job alone. That sounds fine. What about the other one? I have a usual delivery girl that goes and picks up and drops off things for me from time to time. The problem is that she is a ninja and she can't always be there, so I usually have to request a mission for some genin to do. I am willing to make you my permanent backup and you will be the only one who gets the mission pay. I like to have familiar faces handling my stuff, and I feel like you are going to be a regular in my store. Naruto thought this would also be a good way to make money, especially since he could just make clone do these jobs whenever he wanted. Alright, I'm game for both of them. Good, just come in at any time for the tags and scrolls. I think I might have a delivery for you in a few days too, so come by and check. Ishii said. Anything else you need? Yeah, kind of. If you don't mind me asking, Naruto questioned. What were you doing before I came in? Huh, oh that. I was just sharpening up my swords. Sharpening? Mused Naruto. How exactly were you doing that? I use a sharpening stone, which I use to grind against the sword. This sharpens and hones the blade the more I grind. Is there a reason for these questions? Naruto ignored him and just sat there thinking for a few moments. Naruto decided something and made the seal for a shadow clone. Naruto did this silently, because he was trying to get into the habit of not verbalizing his attacks, well unless, of course he wanted to be dramatic. Poof! A clone appeared in the middle of the shop, but before the smoke even had a chance to dissipate, Naruto punched the copy in the jaw, causing it to dispel. Ah, Ishii, the shop owner, just stood there confused while all this played out. If that will be all, I will just leave you to it. Ishii went back to sharpening his swords. Naruto was too busy getting over the fact that he might finally make some progress in wind manipulation to notice what Ishii did. Naruto finally arrived at the place where he trained with Jiraiya, after a quick stop to the training grounds to drop off most of his sealing materials. When he looked around to find Jiraiya, he was confused because he spotted him behind what looked like a fortified wall made out of mud and rocks. "Hey Eros Sennin, what is that for?" Naruto asked, pointing at the wall structure. "Don't call me that idiot," snapped Jiraiya, with his veins poking out, "and as for this, well, let's just call it a useful piece of scenery which I will be using as a resting post for the remainder of the day." Whatever, waved off Naruto, not feeling like putting up with his sensei's antics today. "So how come you didn't immediately try to hit me when I arrived? I thought evasive movements was first." "Today Gaki, we will only be working on Fuinjutsu," explained Jiraiya. "You have quickly grasped concepts of sealing in a short amount of time, so now it is time to get your practical knowledge up to where you are theoretically. Yes, today I won't be going home in pain, I will just be sitting and drawing. Maybe a few explosions, but none of them will be with me in them. I am ready to start, Jiraiya-sensei." "Haha, now that's more like it," cheered Jiraiya. "Let's see how enthusiastic you will be at the end of the day," the sage said, mostly to himself. Naruto was crying and thanking the heavens at the moment, and didn't even know his sensei opened his mouth. A burnt and crispy Naruto is what showed up at Training Ground 9 that evening. Naruto also was burning mad. The clones weren't sure whether the smoke rising from his head was the result of his anger or whatever got him the way he looked. "He was using it as a shield," grumbled out Naruto. No one told him how dangerous messing up a seal was, and even though he should have known that by himself, he wasn't expecting it to be so precise. Naruto blew himself up no less than 24 times, and he wasn't even working on explosive tags when those happened. When he did try explosive tags, it looked like the entire Uchiha clan came back to life and decided to use that field as practice. A good thing is that he got used to Fuinjutsu enough, where he won't be making as many mistakes as he did today again. Another upside is that, while he was more burnt than he has ever been in his life, he could still move and function unlike all the other training days. The fact that he could still move, and his chakra was full bothered Naruto, so he decided to come to the training ground to work himself to proper exhaustion. "Hey boss, come over here," one clone yelled from the other side of the field. Naruto went over to him to see what he was called over for. "Check this out," the clone said, holding out a leaf in his hands. Then right before Naruto's eyes the leaf split cleanly into two, as if sliced by the finest blade. "Finally, yes, I completed the first stage. Telephone me, did any clones start on the second part?" "Yeah, there is a whole squad of clones down by the waterfall trying to split it in half. We already accomplished it a couple times, but we are trying to achieve it with less and less numbers until only one is needed to split the whole waterfall." "This is great news. I'm guessing that since I didn't know about this previously that, none of the clones working on this dispelled." The clone sheepishly laughed, and rubbed the back of his head. "Oh yeah, I knew we were forgetting to do something. It's all right, just dispel now, I am sure the knowledge of this will help other groups a lot." "Yosh, man, how come more clones can't be like you?" The clone didn't answer, it just smiled and dispelled itself into smoke. Boom. Well, that was what was supposed to happen, but instead of a cloud of smoke, it was an explosion of flames. Naruto barely jumped away, avoiding being burnt once again for the 100th time today. Naruto landed a few meters back, and looked around to see all the clones laughing at him. Shortly after he received the memories from the clones. It seems one group discovered how to make clones explode, and all the clones decided that it would be something funny to demonstrate on Naruto when they saw him come in already burnt. Thankfully everything else that came out of the scheming clone's mouth was true. Naruto was tempted to massacre all the clones he had, if they weren't working to improve for his betterment. I swear, where the hell did they get this from? There is only a week and a half left until the third round of the Chunin Exams, and Naruto's training was very productive. Pervy Sage told him that they far exceeded what he expected to go over in just 1 month. Naruto was also coming up with more and more stuff to learn on his own too. He stopped going to Higarashi's to buy weights because he figured out how to mimic them with seals, and could now increase and decrease the amount of weight the seal was by application of his chakra. He mastered both exercises for fire and wind manipulation and was working on increasing his proficiency with all corresponding jutsus. When it came to sealing, Jiraiya told him that he was picking it up faster than his last student, and considering his last student was the fourth Hokage, Naruto decided to take that as a compliment. On a side note, Naruto was finally able to function normally after training with Jiraiya. He would only be sore for the rest of the day, and didn't have to immediately pass out. Naruto did come back to Higurashi a few days after he bought his sealing supplies, and he already completed a few deliveries. He has also been delivering explosive tags and sealing scrolls twice every week. Naruto figures that once he was back to doing active missions, he would never be short on money. Naruto visited Hinata a couple more times too, and even ran into Hanabi again. Those meetings went exactly as the last ones, ending with both Hyuga's faces red, although for different reasons. He also was learning when to make a strategic exit when someone was gunning for your head. Currently Naruto was warming up in front of Jiraiya, getting ready for their first lesson. It took him a few minutes of nothing happening to realize that his sensei wasn't going to attack him anytime soon. Jiraiya beckoned him over with his hand, and gestured for him to sit down. "Alright Naruto, today I am going to teach you another jutsu." Naruto started jumping up and down in place, and was about to verbalize his excitement. Jiraiya cut him off before he could get too far in his celebration. "But this one will be a little different, kid." Naruto sat back down, and stared at his sensei attentively. "What do you mean, pervy sage?" Jiraiya was agitated, but decided to ignore the disrespect at the moment. "I mean that this jutsu was made by the fourth Hokage himself, who taught it to me, and I in turn will teach it to you." Naruto was looking starry-eyed at his teacher now. "What is it?" Jiraiya put out his hand out and a spinning mass of chakra formed spherically in his palm, the Rasengan. Naruto was mesmerized by the jutsu, and couldn't wait to learn it. Jiraiya reached into a previously unnoticed bag and pulled out 2 water balloons. He tossed one to Naruto and put the other in his right hand. "First step is popping this balloon by spinning the water inside. Pop. Now you're not going to get it in your first try, be you?" "Pop. Huh." Jiraiya looked over at Naruto and saw him with one wet hand and no balloon. "You're right, it took me 2 tries." Jiraiya didn't know what to say, so he just stood there stammering. "I mean, after it didn't work the first time, I just increased the rotations and bam." Yeah, whatever. Beginner's luck." Jiraiya pulled out a rubber ball and threw it at Naruto. "Try to pop that with just your pop. Come on." "Really?" Naruto deadpanned. "If there is one thing my chakra has in spades is density and power." "Yeah, whatever. The last step is combining both steps and then stabilizing it." Naruto tried the last step, but unlike the other ones, he failed miserably. He tried a few more times and didn't get any closer to making anything resembling what his teacher had shown him earlier. "Harder than you thought it would be, huh?" Jiraiya told him. "The other 2 are really just to help with understanding the concept. This step is where you are going to need more than just natural ability and luck. Now try that later on your own time, we can start your regular training now." Naruto had just finished shopping for all the food he needed for his house. He also made a second trip to the library to see if he could glean any more useful information. Now all he had left to do was one more thing before he was done. Naruto discovered while he was training that it was easy for him to get a lot of cuts and scrapes. Naruto decided that the perfect thing for him to get to avoid all that was a mesh undershirt. An idea he got after seeing Jiraiya's one day when they was sparring. Naruto walked into Higarashi's weapon shop, making the bell ring when he opened the door. "Hello. How may I help you today?" said a familiar girl at the front counter. "Hey wait, I know you. You're the guy that's going to be facing Neji in the finals." "Yeah, that's me. I'm Naruto, and if I remember correctly you're one of his and Brushy Brow's teammates," said Naruto. "Brushy Brows," she repeated while chuckling. "Yeah, that's me. The name's Tenten. I don't think I have seen you here before. Is this your first visit?" "Nope, I've had more than a few visits here already." Now it's my turn to ask a question. Why are you? Naruto stopped. He remembered Ishii telling him how he had a daughter on a Genin team that worked for him sometimes, and now that Naruto thought about Tenten had way too many weapons for any normal person to reasonably have. Never mind, I answered it myself. Okay, so what were you looking for? A mesh shirts that I could wear under my clothes. I also came to see if your dad had any more deliveries, but I can see that as a moot point. Deliveries? She questioned. Oh, my dad did say he found someone to take some of my load so I can train more. I guess you were the one he was talking about. Thanks for that. Tenten went and got out of a box a stack of mesh shirts that looked around Naruto's size. I think I got some that can fit you, but I'm not 100% sure. That's okay, said Naruto, before he started to remove his shirt. Whoa, what are you doing? Said Tenten, her face gaining a pink hue. It's not that she hasn't seen any guy shirtless before. She was just surprised at how suddenly Naruto started stripping. Well, I wasn't going to buy them and wait until I get home to find out I can't fit them. So I'm try it on now. Don't worry, I will still pay for the one I wear. That's not the problem here. Tenten was more shocked than anything. People normally had more reserve than this in public. Naruto finally got his shirt off, and Tenten's jaw dropped when she saw his upper body. She would have never guessed that the boy wearing a bright orange jumpsuit would have such defined abs and a strong chest underneath it. Naruto put on the mesh clothing, and it didn't help to hide his body. The shirt barely fit and was tight around his lean muscular frame. Tenten had to admit that the boy made for good eye candy. Well, look at that. It fits perfect. One would think that it being so tight would make it uncomfortable, but it feels completely fine. Thanks, Tenten. I'll take the rest of the shirts. Tenten shook her head, and continued to do her job. This isn't fair. I get 2 green weirdos, and a uptight jerk, while the useless Pinky has 3 cute guys all on one team. Man, some people get all the luck. Naruto put his regular shirt back on and paid for his purchases. Thanks for the help, Tenten. No problem. It was a slow day and I was getting bored. Come around anytime you want. It was a new day, and Naruto was headed back to the hospital. Jiraiya came to his apartment that morning and told him he had 2 days to rest before the finals. Naruto was thankful he was finally getting a break. He always felt sore after their training, and that meant a lot considering he had advanced healing. Naruto made his way inside the building and quickly walked to Hinata's room. When he arrived, he heard some talking from behind the door, and wondered who else was visiting Hinata. Strangely enough, he hasn't ran into anybody else all the other times he had been here. Knock knock. Come in. Naruto walked in and saw Hinata sitting on her bed back in her normal attire. Naruto noticed that there was someone else in the room glaring at him, and decided to ignore them. Hey Hinata, I see that you are finally getting out. You remember our plans to go to Ichiraku's? Hinata blushed a little from embarrassment. Why yeah, I remember. She glanced at the other person in the room for a second. So let's go. Right now is the perfect time to go because this is when less people usually come. I'm sorry I can't go. My father requested that I come straight home. This is something that shouldn't be put off. Naruto said disappointingly. Then he turned to the other occupant of the room who had been glaring at him icily the whole time. Naruto just looked at them with a blank look on his face, which just made the person glare harder. The room became quiet. Quote. Hinata didn't say anything because she wasn't sure how to settle the atmosphere. The other two just kept looking at each other. It seemed as if the silence would last forever, before Naruto suddenly broke it. Hinata, I think your baby sister might have gotten a few inches taller since I last saw her. Naruto said. Hanabi's face immediately twisted into a deathly glare. They grow so fast, don't they? You're just begging to die, aren't you? Hanabi growled out. I suggest you leave before I have to traumatize my littler sister. Huh, little sister? Asked Naruto, looking around in exaggeration. Where at? Like a replay of other times, Hanabi jumped at Naruto with plans to have him in pain, and on the she could get to him though, Hinata jumped in the way. Sister, wait. Get out of the way, Hinata, seethed Hanabi. He practically begged for it after he so boldly flirted with you in front of my face. Whoa, hold up. Fleer, shut up. No one is speaking to you of. Sister, you can't hurt him. He has a match in the Chunin exams in a couple days. Maybe that's something he should have thought of before he disrespected me, as well as you. She turned her eyes to Naruto. Now, he'll be lucky to arrive in hers. Wait, his first match is against Neji. This was finally what got the smaller girl to stand down. Against Neji? Hanabi asked. Is that true? She asked Naruto. Yeah, and I'm going to beat him black and blue until he crawls back to Hinata and apologizes. Naruto answered. Hanabi just stared at Naruto for a few moments before turning around and leaving. Come on Hinata, father is expecting us. Bye Naruto. Hinata said while she made her way to the door. I hope we can get ramen another day. Naruto watched the two sisters leave with an unreadable expression on his face. It was only after a few seconds did he finally release a huge breath he had been holding. Man, I seriously thought I was going to die, he whined. What am I retarded? It was officially the day of the finals and Naruto was happier than anyone else that it was here. The combined weight of the anticipation and the boredom was killing him, and he was sure he was going to start picking fights if he had to wait any longer. The night before he triple-checked all his gear and ran through what he knew in his head over and over again. He almost couldn't fall asleep because of his impatience, but the day was finally here. He worked long and hard this past month. He completed training for both of his affinities. Mastered countless techniques. Exhausted himself every day. All of that for this moment. Well kind of, he was doing it to increase his skills to do better in the field, but since he was officially on a month break for the finals, primarily it was for the finals. Naruto woke up 2 hours before he had to be at the stadium, and started getting ready for the day. He put his clothes on, attached his ninja equipment, and did a few stretches. Naruto ditched his old clothes for some new threads. Something that looked better, which wasn't that hard to do, felt better, and lasted better. Naruto was finally ready to go, and he had an hour and 45 minutes left. Wanting to psych himself down so he could be in a calm mind, he went to the middle of his floor and started meditating. Chapter 4, First Match Start. Yawn. Naruto stretched his arms, and got up. He took a couple steps to orientate himself, before he was stabilized. I think that was the best nap that I ever had, he said, rubbing his eyes. Maybe there is something to that meditation thing besides focus. I might start doing that every night. Naruto smacked his lips and looked around. I wonder what time it is. Naruto blearily spotted his clock on top of his nightstand. 7:59, almost 80 feet clock. Man, I swear something was happening at that time. He tapped his chin. Naruto walked towards his window, and opened it up. He rested his head on the windowsill while he thought. It can't be Ichiraku's, they open way earlier than this, and I don't think I have any classes with Ero Sennin today. Maybe Ishii had a delivery for me to make, but I don't remember that. Naruto notices that the streets of Konoha are fuller and livelier than they usually are at around this time. I wonder what's up with all these people. They usually are only this festive on my birthday. It seems like they are all headed somewhere. He trails his eyes over the crowds, to try and follow where they were going. Naruto saw that the masses all led to a big stadium in the corner of the village. Naruto stared at the arena for a few seconds, with a blank look. Then slowly but surely his eyelids started to lift wider and wider. If these idiots don't make it in time, I am going to kill them both, growled a pink-haired girl with green eyes. Currently all but 2 of the participants of the third stage were standing in the center of the arena. The crowd was nearly full and was bursting with excitement. The noise level made it hard for anyone to hear more than just immediately around them. The rest of the genin who got knocked out in previous stages were sitting together in the stands near the front. All of them were there to show support and to be entertained. Sakura Haruno, the only member of Team 7 that didn't make it past the preliminary round, was sitting next to her best friend, Ino Yamanaka. She had her fist balled up, and had a look of worry written all over her face. The cause of this was because of the fact that the 2 people who were missing were her teammates. Disqualified before they can even fight. Neither of them could stand to go out like that, so what's with them? Sakura moaned. Ino looked towards her friend, then back to the arena. Come on Sakura, you just said it yourself. Both of them would die before they would miss their fights. They'll be here. Quote. I hope, Sakura mumbled, looking anything but reassured. Those two certainly weren't the only ones to notice the absence of Team 7's Genin. How unyouthful. It seems that my rival has managed to pass on his uncouth ways to his students. Yelled out Guy. I must agree, thought Kurenai, if Kakashi's students aren't even going to bother to show up, then Kiba's loss in the preliminary will have been for nothing. Kurenai vowed to herself that she would hospitalize Kakashi if his students don't show up, particularly Naruto. I don't really care if they ever show up. If it happens that there is less competition for Shikamaru, then I won't complain. Asuma said with a heavy blow of smoke. Down in the arena, Shikamaru was unsettled by the change of events. Shit. If neither Naruto nor Sasuke show up, the chances of me getting that psychopath rises by an uncomfortable amount. I am usually all for less work, but today I would like something to stand in between me and that sand Genin. Sigh, what a drag. So he couldn't even manage to show up, huh? I guess he realized that a failure will always be a failure. Fate ordains it. Neji was largely unaffected by the fact that Naruto hasn't shown up. It was just him not having to go through what he assumed would be an easy battle. Now the Uchiha's non-attendance is a cause for me to think about. I am sure he wouldn't pass up an opportunity to show how elite his clan is. I very much looked forward to putting him in his place. Mother wants the Uchiha's blood. Where is he? Thought Gaara. He also thought back to when he went to finish killing the green Genin, and how he was stopped and denied from his desire. I want to kill that blonde boy for myself as well. Hayate, who is still alive obviously, looked around for the two missing fighters. Man, the crowd won't be happy if it turns out that the main event will be denied to them, and I kind wanted to see what Naruto could do myself. Hayate looked at the entrance of the arena. Cough. Will all the competitors clear the floor? Cough, except Uzumaki, Naruto and Hyuga Neji. The first fight is about to begin. Cough. The crowd started to quiet down when they saw the floor clearing, but the noise level immediately rose again with questions when they saw the absence of an opponent for the fight. Back in the stanza, indigo-haired Hyuga was sitting in worry for the object of her affection. Oh no, Naruto is going to be disqualified if he doesn't show up. She didn't want to think about how he would feel if that happened. Naruto-kun, where are you? Damn it, I'm late, Naruto screamed, blurring past rooftops. After all that care I put into waking up at a decent time, I just had to go have a nap and oversleep. Shit. Naruto was jumping from roof to roof, skipping 2 or 3 buildings every now and then. It didn't help that his apartment was on the other side of the village from the arena, so he still had ways to go if he wanted to make it in time for his match. The world started to blur by for Naruto, and he started thinking how he never noticed that the village was so damn big before. I gotta pick up the pace. Naruto pushed even more chakra in his legs than before, and his surroundings became even more indiscernible. Naruto was only 1 street away from the stadium when he messed up. On his way up to a higher structure, he accidentally tripped on a tile, sending him flying way up into the air. Fortunately, he was going so fast that the momentum caused him to fly over the arena. Unfortunately, he was in mid-air and was going pass over the entire place. Naruto had to think fast if he was going to make it to his match in time. He needed some way to land immediately. He brainstormed and tried to think of the most efficient way to do it, and it didn't take him long for him to come up with a plan. His signature "just you" really was the most handy thing he could have ever learned. Naruto mad the seals for the shadow clone jutsu. Poof. Another Naruto appeared next to him. No instructions were needed as he was sure the clone already knew what to do. It has been a full minute since the announcement for the first match to start had went out, and there has been no signs of anyone moving towards the floor. The crowd was starting to get restless, and soon enough were going to start verbally addressing their displeasure in bulk. Many people have started rummaging through their bags and looking around on the floor for projectiles to throw, and others were about to start to yell for them to move on. The crowd gradually started to match and exceed the volume level it had reached before. Hayate wasn't really pleased about what he was going to do, but he had a duty to uphold, and nothing can get in the way of that. He raised his hands to get the crowd's attention. Little by little the spectators noticed and started to quiet down. Hayate cleared his throat. Due to the failure to cough show up, Hayate started. Uzumaki Naruto is. Phoom. Suddenly a orange figure was rocketing towards the ground. No one was able to make out the identity of the unexpected anomaly. Several of the higher-skilled ninjas could see what it looked like, and could perfectly keep track of its descent, but they were unable to figure out the face. Almost every ninja Chunin and above tensed because of the abrupt appearing of the unknown, and were ready to dispose of it if need be. Boom! The unforeseen object collided with the ground, kicking up dirt and obscuring the lander from view. Everyone was on the edge of their seats, bubbling with apprehension, waiting to find out what or who they would see when their vision was no longer concealed. No one in the crowd knew what awaited them beyond the dust. Well, maybe not no one. Naruto, sighed out the old Hokage. You always have to make a scene, don't you? The elderly Sarutobi looked down at the arena fondly. He knew today was going to be a bad day, but he could always look forward to seeing his surrogate grandson. The cloak of grime started to disappear, and the first thing that people saw was a short figure that had a mop of spiky, blonde hair. As more of the dust cleared, it was discovered that whoever they was looking at wasn't short but was in a crouch. Finally the ground was empty of almost all things in the air, and a clear picture of what they was dealing was available for everyone to see. Many people looked at the person on the ground in confusion, as they didn't recognize them. A lot had already thought it might have been the fighter that was about to miss the match, but whoever they were seeing now, and whatever they remember of that boy, didn't match up, so they were left in uncertainty. Some of the audience did recognize the individual at sight but was also similarly hesitant due to a difference in wardrobes. Now down in the arena, Naruto was recovering from his rapid landing as well. He knew that he was going to be descending fast when his clone grabbed his legs and threw him towards the earth, but he didn't expect it to be that speedy. There was no way he could have came out standing when he crashed into the earth, so he landed in a crouch to soften the impact to a specific part of his body. It still stung like hell though. It took Naruto a good couple seconds for him to regain his bearings, enough for him to even attempt standing up. Everyone in the stands saw Naruto stand up, and were quickly able to confirm the suspension many of them had already formed. What they saw next threw them for a loop, because instead of the bright orange that Naruto usually had on, he now had on a different set of attire. Naruto had on grayish-green shorts on that went up past his knees but above his ankles. He had on a black undershirt that seemed to be loose enough to allow mobility, but not big enough to be considered baggy. He wore black sandals, and armbands on his ankles and wrist, which, unknown to the crowd, hold his Fuinjustu formula that adds weight. Finally, to top of his garbs, he was wearing an burnt orange sleeveless hoodie over top of his undershirt. The shade of orange was much more appealing to the eye than the last, and that was a fact that everyone would agree with. Naruto looked out towards the audience, running his eyes over each section. "Sorry I'm late," Naruto announced to the arena. The wind picked up a little, and started to blow around the arena, causing Naruto's hair to flow in the wind. His blonde locks shining as if the sun blessed it to be its counterpart on the planet. Quote. The entire stadium was quiet for a while, with only the blowing of the wind making sounds. Then simultaneously the pitch raised once again. In all the Chunin exams that a lot of the crowd has been to, no one has made an entrance as eye-catching as Naruto's. The Chunin exams was a spectacle that civilians always looked forward to, and before the first fight even began, it was clear that these exams would be an exciting one. Up in the section where the clans sat at, a small short-tempered Hyuga started going red in the face. She was already frustrated at the blonde for almost not making it to the match, but the way in which he arrived just prickled at her nerves even more. Is this guy serious? Tenten, Ino, Sakura, and Hinata, who all decided to sit together, had different reactions to Naruto's entrance. Hinata had a fond smile on her face, knowing that what just happened was just like Naruto. If this idiot was late because he was setting this up, then the next time I see him I'm going to punch his lights out. Sakura just growled to herself. I hope Sasuke didn't get pulled into Naruto's dumb ideas. Ino smiled at Sakura and nudged her with her shoulder. Come on, you have to admit that he looks pretty cool right about now. Tenten stared at the spectacle down in the arena and whistled. Wow, what a way to start the first. Too bad he's going to lose the match. Ahem, Hayate cleared his throat, and raised his hand. The crowd slowly but surely settled down to listen to what the proctor had to say. Naruto, you were this close to being disqualified. Luckily you showed up in the nick of time. no matter how unique your entrance was. He. This time Naruto actually laughed sheepishly, while he had a sweat drop slide down his head. Neji just stared at Naruto, as if the dust on his shoe got up and came to life. I must commend you on your courage to come over and face me like a man, but I have to also berate you on your foolishness of actually fighting me. You should have just stayed home, we both know it's hopeless. Neji said to Naruto smugly. Like hell I will, I already promised you that I won't be happy until you're black and blue. Naruto reached into one of his pockets and pulled out his new black forehead protector. He tied the piece of metal onto his head, and adjusted it. Then he pointed his thumb towards the leaf insignia, and I never go back on my word. TCH, Neji scoffed. If the both of you are done, interrupted the proctor. Then let the match begin. He announced. The proctor swiftly jumped out of the hot zone, and settled at a distance to observe the fight. This could be interesting, said Hiyashi from the stands where the Hyugas were sitting. Neji has one of the most developed Byakugan in the clan. It's even stronger than your sister's. Tu-san is wrong, Hanabi thought to herself. Neji's eyes can only see what is around him better than Nei-san, but hers can see over incredibly distances that are unheard of in the clan. She just doesn't want to show it off. Neither Neji or Naruto moved, and it didn't seem like either of them would. Of course, as always, Naruto was the first to attack. He could only hold out for so long. He palmed several kunai in his hand and launched them at Neji in a single motion. Neji didn't even dignify the offensive move as something to be worried about. The Hyuga just moved his head out of the way and let the projectiles fly past, leaving Neji unharmed. Naruto took out even more kunai and threw them towards Neji at a faster rate. Neji couldn't just move his head to avoid them this time, so he plucked the closest one out of the air and used it to deflect the other ones. Already I can tell that his perception and coordination are way above any genin I have ever seen. It seems I will have to make this a close-range battle, where I can surprise him, and give him less time to react. Just because he can see everything doesn't mean he can dodge it. Naruto mused. I also want to keep how much I've improved this moth to myself, for as long as possible. I don't want to give all my skills away and give my next opponents time to devise ways to counter them, and I want to conserve as much chakra as possible. The best way to do this is to make this a up and personal fight. Too bad I have to get the taijutsu prodigy first, which means I am probably going to come out of this hurting. Well, as long as I hold back. Naruto started to run to Neji, intending to start a hand-to-hand fight with him. A move many people thought was foolish and stupid. In the stands with the genin, several ninjas jumped up to tell Naruto of his mistake. What are you doing, you idiot? There is no way you can fight a Hyuga one-on-one like that, yelled Kiba. Come on, Naruto. Use your head, screamed Sakura. Tenten looked at the battle with a conflicted look on her face. I hate to say it, but I don't think that it matters whether or not Naruto attacks head-on or not. He's going to lose regardless. All of the genin around her stopped and started to stare at her, some in intrigue, and some with rising anger. No offense to Naruto, but no genin in the leaf is stronger than Neji. Trust me, I know this personally to be true since I trained with him, especially after this month. He isn't going to be defeated no matter what Naruto does. Many of her listeners started getting contemplated looks on their faces, and even if they didn't believe what she said to be true, couldn't deny the superiority that Neji had. You're wrong, a voice yelled out, breaking the silence. Everyone looked towards the sound, and found Hinata standing out of her seat with a defiant look on her face. Neji is not the strongest genin in the village. Maybe I would agree with you if skill had to do with strength, but it doesn't, it only has to do with spirit. Naruto has been through more, and has overcome more things than anyone else, and he has never backed down. Naruto is the strongest genin because he has the brightest spirit and no one can say any difference. Naruto Uzumaki never gives up, that's why he will win. Hinata said all this without even stuttering once. All the Konoha genin looked at her in a new light, they never knew she had so much fire in her. Back down on the floor, Naruto was quickly approaching Neji. Bastard. He still isn't taking me serious by activating his Byakugan. I'm all for having an advantage by someone underestimating me, but something about him doing it when he is the same level as me pisses me off. Naruto finally reached his destination and came in with a soaring punch aimed at Neji's face. The feminine Hyuga leaned his body to the side to avoid the blow, sending Naruto flying past him. Naruto stopped himself by planting his hands on the ground, and used his momentum to swing his legs around to execute a leg sweep. Neji flipped backwards, and landed on his feet. He pushed off his heels and came speeding at Naruto with a palm thrust. Naruto deflected the strike with his hand while in a spin, bringing his elbow around to hit Neji's face. Neji could only stop the strike by bringing his other arm up to block it. His way faster than expected. I didn't expect him to be able to stop one of my attacks, and all of his come in split seconds, Neji thought. The two of them struggled for dominance for a few moments before they broke off by jumping away. They stared at each other for a few more seconds before they re-engaged. They both started fighting to see who could get the first hit in, but as the minutes wore on, nobody was able to land a successful strike. Neji had more nimbleness, meaning he could maneuver past Naruto's strikes to deliver his own, but Naruto had good reflex and timing and could always avoid the hits at the last second. Then Naruto would twist his body to use his motion as a way to not stop moving. Naruto, using this, became a constant barrage of attacks that never stopped. It was a fight between two types of agility. One agile in body, able to move quickly and easily, and one agile in mind, able to think and draw conclusions quickly. The stalemate continues in this pattern for several minutes before Naruto jumped away and back to his side of the arena. Hey, finally come to see reason, and realized your inability to win. Give up, it's your fate. Neji gloated. As if. I'm just getting started. Naruto shot back. As if. Surely you realize that if you can't defeat me while I don't have my bloodline activated, that it's hopeless when I do. Whatever. Did you really think you was the only one holding back? Naruto made a seal, and released one level of 3 on the seals he had restraining his speed. Now get ready. 'Cause the real battle starts now. With that, Naruto shot towards Neji in a burst of speed, kicking up dirt at his starting position. He was so fast Neji only had time to seamlessly activate his bloodline before Naruto came at him with a fist. Neji narrowly avoided the punch by twisting backwards, going into a back flip, but when he came back up, Naruto was already on him with another punch. Neji could only parry this one with his palm, directing the hand downward. Too bad Naruto used that motion to execute a front flip aimed for Neji's face. Neji narrowly jumped out of the way, in the nick of time. A feat he was even happier for when he saw the mini crater and cracks Naruto left on the ground from his kick. Neji only got a second of relief because Naruto moved his foot onto its toes and launched back at him. Through all this, Neji didn't even have time to get an attack. Up in the stands, Naruto's friends, and their senseis looked on in shock at his display of speed. Naruto-kun's flames of youth shine brightly today, proclaimed Guy. Meanwhile, the other Jonin senseis looked at the scene dumbstruck. What the hell has Kakashi been doing with him? Was the collective thought running through their minds. Lee was cheering for Naruto as he has never seen someone get this close to beating Neji other than him, and he had to admit that Naruto was doing better. Naruto-kun's fighting style is far more effective against the gentle fist than the strong fist. Also, not only can he go nearly as fast as me, but he can also react and counter in an instant. Over by the other Genin, they were also looking at Naruto in awe. All they could see, unlike the veteran shinobi, was Naruto disappearing and reappearing with a strike, and that happening over and over again with Neji barely dodging the blows. Whoa, he looks like he's as fast as Lee, stuttered out Tenten. I knew he got some weights from our store, but to obtain Lee's speed in just a month is insane. Sakura. What the heck did Naruto do to train this whole month? Asked Ino in a stupor. I'm not sure, I only saw him in passing a couple times this month. I heard that Kakashi found him a teacher though, replied Sakura. Well, whoever trained him was amazing. If Naruto could have done this a month ago, I wouldn't even had lasted a second. Kiba grumbled. How did he get so strong? That's not fair. Up in the Hokage booth, neither leaders said anything, but if one looked at their eyes you could see them filled with surprise and interest. Though two different type of interests were brewing in their heads. It was silent in the participant booth as well, everyone too shocked to speak. I figured Naruto got way stronger than he was before, but this is unbelievable. What a drag. This exam is becoming more troublesome by the minute, complained Shikamaru in his head. Shit, what the hell? Most likely that Uchiha kid got stronger as well. Those damn genin might cause some hindrances to the plan, thought Temari, gritting her teeth. Gaara had a maniacal grin plastered all over his face. Mother wants his blood. He's strong, he will be able to prove my existence. Mother wants his blood. Kankuro had a concerned look on his face, but that's about it. Shino was also quiet, but he only adopted a look of intrigue. Dosu, who, yes is still alive, only held a confident look on his face, not at all disturbed by the skill being shown on the field. Back in the arena, Naruto was getting tired of Neji avoiding his attacks and decided to end the lack of progression he was having. Naruto came in for a clothesline, forcing Neji to duck under his arm. When he did that, Naruto put his hands together to create the shadow clone seal. Poof! A clone appeared right above Neji's crouched form to deliver a flying kick. Neji jumped back to avoid contact with its foot. The original Naruto already was coming back for follow-up attack, but Neji twisted to avoid that, dodging that as well. As Neji turned back around, he saw Naruto flying towards him faster than all other times before, and he knew he couldn't dodge it. The only thing he could do is put his arms up in a cross to absorb the hit for him. Smack! The sound of contact echoes around the arena, signifying the first solid hit that anyone has made all match. Neji went sliding a couple feet back, but before he could recover, the two blonde ninja were back on him again. Neji was tried to defend with all his might, but as time went on he received more and more hits. Neji didn't particularly like being tossed around, so he jumped away from Naruto once he found an opening. Neji landed across the field, and wiped the blood off his lips. Why do you continue to defy fate? Neji snarled. You will always be a failure, nothing can change that. So just accept your destiny, and give up. I thought I already told you. Naruto retorted, making a familiar seal once again. I can't do that. Poof. 3 more clones of Naruto appeared, bringing the total up to 5. The original Naruto then gave the signal for them to charge. They all started running towards Neji, 2 of them even launching into the air, to do an attack from above. Naruto was serious about his promise to beat Neji down, that's why he summoned 4 clones to help him. The Naruto were closing into Neji, and to all of the crowd it seemed as this was going to be the end of the fight. All of the crowd, that is, except Tenten. Tenten shook her head. Too bad, Naruto, Neji has trained all month and you're not the only one to become stronger. This is why it is certain you will lose. The rest of the Genin just looked at her in confusion. She just shook her head and continued to watch the match. Down in the arena, Neji looked at the approaching adversaries with a calculating look. Neji then began to smile. You fool, he said condescendingly. I told you already. Naruto and his clone closed in on Neji, but before any hits could land, they suddenly met a strange resistance. A second later, visible chakra started to leak from Neji, which made clear what was being used to slow Naruto. Neji started twirling in a circle. Give up. The spinning Hyuga was being encased in what looked like a twisting dome of chakra. Kaden, Naruto and his copies were blown back by the force of the attack to the other side of the stadium, dispelling the clones in the process. He hit the ground and slid for a few more meters, and was a bit disorientated, causing him to stay down for a little longer than normal. Hinata was looking at her cousin with a shocked look on her face. How? That's Kaden, yelled Hiyashi, standing up in the midst of the crowd. That's a technique only known by the main branch, how was he able to learn it? Hanabi just looked odd. I already knew that Neji-san was considered a genius, but to recreate that jutsu by himself is amazing. What was that? Questioned Sakura. That was the 8 trigrams palms rotation. A move that Neji has been working on all month. It's an impenetrable wall of chakra that comes from all over his body. A lot of ninjas can only direct their chakra out of their body from one place in their body at a time, like their hands or their feet. Neji's mastery over his chakra is so good that he is able to push it out from multiple places at once, creating what is called Kaden. I tested its defense myself. The technique is basically impossible to break. Down back in the arena, Naruto had almost recovered and was catching his breath on the opposite side from where Neji was. Naruto had to figure out a way to overcome the new obstacle that just appeared. First, he decided, he had to test how strong that attack was. Naruto pulled out a handful of shuriken, and held them at ready. Let's see how you handle this, bastard. Naruto threw all the weapons in his hands, then made a single hand seal. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. Up in the stands, the two Kages were shocked by the jutsu that Naruto just showed. The Hokage didn't even know many other than him knew that jutsu, while the Kage's eyes seemed to shine bright with greed. All over the crowd, ninjas were shocked by the jutsu that was famed to be used by the god of shinobi. They all noted how in one match Naruto showed above proficient use in two high-ranked justice. Naruto released barrage after barrage of shuriken which multiplied and became a dozen each. The only way that Neji could avoid this attack is if he used Kaden again, so that's what he did. Neji's sphere of chakra was getting pelted by wave after wave of endless shuriken, but it didn't seem to be wavering anytime soon. Naruto stopped throwing shuriken, and reached in his pouch to grab 3 explosive tags attached to kunai. Try this. He threw the timed explosive across the field, and to the still spinning Hyuga. Boom. Naruto waited patiently for the smoke to clear to see if Neji's Kaden was able to stop that attack as well. Naruto wasn't the only one. Almost every single person in the crowd was sitting in anticipation in whether or not Neji avoided the blast. When the smoke was cleared, everyone saw a perfectly non-harmed Neji standing in the center of a circle engraved in the ground in the center of a bigger crater. It didn't take a genius to know what that meant. The crowd went wild, clearly excited by the match that they originally had low expectations for. Don't you see, you cannot fight against fate. Only a fool would dream to become Hokage when they clearly aren't destined to be. Grr. Shut up. What the hell is your problem talking about fate like that? Everyone can decide their own future. Ha. Let me show you reality. The thing which is a reminder of my fate. Neji then pulled off his headband and showed Naruto his caged bird seal. This seal defines my entire life, and there is nothing I can do to escape it. Neji then went on to tell him the history of his family, about the death of his father, and his duties towards the clan. The more Naruto heard, the madder he became. He was mad at Neji, the Hyugas, and the village for allowing this to happen. These eyes of mine show me many things. One thing they've shown me: people's limitations are set, fixed, and unchangeable. Only a fool wastes his time trying to become something he can never be. The only destiny that everyone shares is death. If it's your job to serve Hinata-chan, then why the hell did you almost try to kill her in the preliminary? That's the opposite of everything you just told me. Naruto roared out. You say that I am an idiot for fighting to change my life, when you were trying to defy fate just like me. We're exactly alike. Neji's face turned into the pure definition of the word rage. Shut up, you don't know what you are talking about. He screamed. Neji launched towards Naruto in a considerably faster speed than whatever he was going before. Neji's hands started glowing blue in concentration of chakra. You are now within the range of my divination. Impossible, yelled Hiyashi. An opinion that was shared by several clan members. No way. It can't be, whispered Hanabi. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Neji delivered 2 consecutive strikes. Naruto moved out of the way of those 2 palms. Neji then did 2 more strike. Naruto dodged them too. 4 palms. Neji now did 4 strikes, something which Naruto was hard-pressed to not get hit by. 8 palms. Neji came with 8 strike. Naruto felt as if he almost was hit once or twice. 16 palms. Neji followed with 16 consecutive strikes, more than a few scraped Naruto's clothes. 32 palms. Hinata looked at Naruto in a mixture of awe and worry. Naruto-kun dodged all of Neji's attacks. Now if only he can keep it up. Expectantly Neji started to grin, throwing Naruto for a loop. He started going twice as fast as before, catching Naruto off guard, and rendering him vulnerable. Naruto was receiving 32 consecutive strikes courtesy of Neji, and they were way more fierce than before. Naruto tried his best to not get hit, but from the stinging in his left arm, he knew he failed. Neji stepped forward and thrust his palm out to deliver a strong hit to finish off the move. Naruto only by a hair length maneuvered his body, so that his already hurt left arm took the brunt of the attack. 64 palms. Naruto-kun, whimpered Hinata. Naruto was sent sailing through the air, only touching the ground for a second and then to skid and bounce back up. Naruto was able to stop himself by using his right hand as friction to slow himself down. Naruto was disorientated for a few minutes, but was finally able to stumble to his feet. He was breathing in rapid breaths, and was cradling his left arm with his right. I have told you fate has always decreed me winner, you had no chance. This match is over. Grr. Don't count me out yet, retorted Naruto. Why not? It's useless to continue. Without both your arms you are unable to perform that cloning technique you love so much, and the rate and effectiveness of your attacks by yourself decrease enormously. Not only that, but also you have to carry around dead weight around, which won't help you at all, especially considering you're exhausted. There is no point in fighting. I am in perfect condition, and I have more than enough chakra left. Unlike others, I don't waste it by constantly doing fancy jutsus and wasted strokes. Please spare yourself of any further pain, gloated Neji. The stands resonated with the sound of countless people voicing how they thought that time was up for the orange aspiring rookie Genin. He had a good run, but it seems that Neji was still able to best him in the end, commented Asuma. No, I believe that Naruto-kun's flame of youth have not been put out yet, replied Guy. I also believe that Guy-sensei, Naruto-kun would not let such a disadvantage hold him back from trying to win. Agreed Lee. Naruto is not getting back up from that, Tenten told everyone. Like I said before, it was over once Neji started his attack. I knew it from the beginning, no one in the leaf can beat Neji. I doubt it, Sakura said, drawing everyone's attention. Naruto isn't the type of guy to stop fighting in any situation, even if he has lost an arm. Trust me on that one. I feel you on that one, but even if he still fights, what can he do to win against this guy? It seems it's the end of the road for Naruto, Kiba responded. In the participant booth, almost everyone was in the single opinion that the match's victor was decided. The cute blonde kid seemed like he had it for a while. It seemed like his luck had to run out sometime, stated Tamari. Shikamaru yawned, then started to chuckle loudly. I wouldn't be so sure about that. I might not have seen a lot of Naruto in battle, but I have known Naruto for a long time, and knows how he would act in almost every situation. The lazy Nara started, and almost every time the chips were down, and things seemed impossible for him, Naruto came back 10 times harder. The booth got quiet after that revelation. TCH. Whatever, scoffed Kankuro. It seems Sarutobi has raised a fine container. I wonder if this is the end for it. I've had quite the fun watching him, said a snake in his mind. Back in the arena, Neji was still standing proudly in the center, while Naruto was trying to recover himself while thinking of a plan. Naruto couldn't feel the natural flow of chakra he usually feels in his left arm. In fact, he couldn't feel anything at all. The whole arm was numb, and somehow at the same time it burned. Naruto knew it was useless to even try to move the appendage. Naruto did a good job in directing most of Neji's landed hits to one area, but he was still disappointed he lost his entire left arm. He knew that with the combination of his and the Kyuubi's chakra that his arm would be back to normal in no time, but the problem was that by the time his arm would be in any shape to go again, this match would be long over. Naruto brainstormed all the ways he could still win. Shit. With the loss of my arm, there is only a limited number of ways that I can win, and they all include revealing something I don't want to be shown yet. And if it gets out now, then they can be countered by plans in later matches. Naruto mused to himself for a few moments before he came to a decision. Alright, it seems I have no other choice than to show some of my hand. I just need to execute in a way that leaves everyone with the fewest questions. Considering I am going to have to do it with one hand already tells me that the fewest questions is still going to be way too many. Naruto released the second level of only the seal on his right wristband. He could feel chakra surging into his working hand and flowing all throughout it. Naruto started to gather as much energy as he could in his fist before he rocketed off. Neji saw that Naruto was continuing the battle by running towards him. How persistent, almost like a cockroach, Neji growled. Neji got in a steady position, ready to do what need be based on whatever Naruto was doing. Naruto was pacing his way to Neji. He wanted time to build up his attack. There was now so much chakra pulsing in his arm that it was emitting a faint glow. When Naruto felt he had gathered enough chakra, he started going through hand seals with one hand. A feat which no one in the crowd missed. What is he doing? Is that even possible? I heard of ninjas that could use one hand, but never a genin. This must be a fluke he is using to throw his competitor off guard, The crowd echoed with the sound of everyone's astonishment of Naruto's new reveal. Orochimaru stared at Naruto with wide, yellow, slit pupil eyes. His whole body was shaking in apprehension. One-handed seals. Usarutobi-sensei, you've found yourself a real gem, haven't you? I wonder what his limits are. How would he match up against Sasuke? Cackled the Sannin in his head. The wind started picking up around Naruto, spinning and whirling swiftly. The air became so intense it was visible, and it started howling like an old sorrowful spirit that never moved on. Naruto finished the hand signs for the jutsu, completing the preparation needed. The wind started to swirl around and encase Naruto's fist, giving it a coat of twisting currents. To the spectators it looked as if half of his right arm was replaced by a miniature tornado. Naruto, having completed the jutsu, sped up and blurred away to finish Neji with it. Neji, seeing the approaching doom running towards him, inferred the only way to get ahead of the oncoming attack unscratched was with Genin. Neji started pushing out chakra from everywhere again, and started to rotate. Why won't you quit? Soon enough Neji was inside a perfect sphere of spinning chakra. Naruto was right in front of the dome now, and he cocked his right fist back in preparation to punch. Because all don't ever give up. Naruto slammed his fist into the Hyuga's prized Just-You. Kaden, Kami Ken. The resulting force from the clash of the two jutsus caused everyone from any of the rows near the front to be pressed back against their seats. A whirlwind of chakra overcame the arena, forcing many to hold on to something in fear of being knocked down. It looked like a blue vortex, with the eye being Naruto and Neji. The duo continued to fight for dominance. The harder they pushed, the wilder the environment became. Both of their respective jutsu gaining strength and size as time went on. It was as if two unstoppable forces were ramming against each other. Neither side seemed to be gaining, when all of a sudden everything exploded. Boom! A figure shot out of the smoke and slammed into the wall on the side of the stadium. The smoke cleared faster than usual this time, and everyone saw that in the center of the arena was Naruto with his hand still stretched out. Neji was sliding down the wall, ending up on his butt on the ground. Unfortunately, he still wasn't unconscious. Gay, Neji spit out some blood. I'm not finished yet. Yeah, Naruto said, then he made a half-ram, half-tiger seal with his hand. We'll see about that. The ground below Neji cracked and a fist came flying out of the ground. Neji was uppercut by the emerging Naruto, and then a subsequent kick sent him flying back towards the center of the arena. Naruto took advantage of this by slamming his fist into Neji's face when he finally reached the center. The crack that came afterwards was heard and felt by everybody. Neji just dropped from the air like someone cut all the strings to a puppet. His face was bruised and had blood leaking from it. The rest of his body didn't look any better. Then the Naruto in the center of the arena burst into smoke, only leaving the one by the wall. Naruto walked up to the lying form of Neji's body. I don't think you're totally wrong. I do believe in destiny and things that are fated to be, but I believe it is impossible to know what they are, so there is no point trying to predict it. If you work hard, you can fight against anything that is set in your way. Naruto said. Besides, you aren't the only one with a seal that defines you. The proctor looked at Neji's body for a few moments to see if there was any sign of retaliation. After it was clear that the match was over, he raised his hand high up into the air. The winner of the first match is Uzumaki Naruto. The crowd started to go wild again, most of them thinking that the battle was one of the most entertaining they have ever witnessed. Of course, many of them always have the same thought until they see another match. The ninjas in the crowd all had to admit that Naruto did way better than expected and surprised them at every turn the whole match. Wow, he actually won, said Tenten in disbelief. I mean, it's not that I wanted him to lose, but didn't think he could actually win. Man, who would have thought that the dead last will beat the rookie of the year? Sure as hell not me, Kiba spoke. This isn't even the final fight, it's only the first match, we still have many more to go. Ino said. Sasuke-kun still didn't show up though, and I am getting worried. Worried Sakura, looking around the crowd. I knew you could do it, Naruto-kun, thought Hinata. I hope one day I can get that strong. The Jonin sensei was surprised by the results as well. Oi, Naruto-kun shall become my new rival, for if I can surpass him, I will have surpassed Neji, ultimately making me stronger, shouted Lee. That's the spirit, Lee. Once you're off those crutches, you can begin to follow your dreams. Guy said in an equally loud voice. It seems Shikamaru has his work cut out for him if he wants to become Chunin, Asuma said, breathing out smoke, but knowing him he probably finds the whole idea of being a Chunin troublesome. Kurenai just snorted in agreement. What do you know, Naruto has an affinity for wind huh? Kotetsu and Izumo had been watching the entire match in the crowds, and were proud of what their favorite genin could do. Already one match and we probably have a shoe in Chunin, Izumo said. Yeah, you're telling me. We haven't even reached the main event and the crowd is going crazy. Kotetsu responded back. In the participant booth everyone was raising their hazard level on the recent winner. What do you know, Blondie still came out of it ahead. He's a wind user to not many of those in the leaf. Tamari said. I wonder if the other guy is going to show up, or if he is going to be disqualified. Kankuro asked. I heard people were looking forward to that match between him and Gaara. Man, they don't know what they are talking about. It doesn't matter how much stronger the brat got, Dosu thought. He still fall to the might of my arm, then I will show my true worth to that bastard. Neji lost, Hiyashi said in a blank tone. To the others around him, they thought he was upset about the turn of events, but to their surprise he started laughing. Ha 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 ha, I should have expected this. Even from the grave you best me. I guess the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree after all, or more like tomato. Hiyashi started cracking up again. Many of the Hyuga feared for his mental health, and asked if he needed to go to the hospital. Hiyashi just waved them off. See Hanabi, that is a splendid shinobi. Hiyashi stared at Naruto as his smile turned wistful. Father has no idea what he's talking about, but still to hear him compliment another ninja is rare. Hanabi stared at Naruto in the stadium, who was running around accepting praise from the audience. I'll have to thank him later for finally kicking Neji off that high horse he was on. I've been wanting to do it myself since he sent Hinata to the hospital. Hanabi scoffed. Stupid clan politics. Up in the cage booth, the Hokage was positively beaming. Oh, how strong you have become. Even in times like these your will of fire still shines brighter than ever. Next to him the supposed Kage just stared at Naruto with excitement in his eyes. I've had more fun than I expected watching you fight Brat, it would be a shame to stop it so early. The Kage cleared his throat. Hokage-sama, I have an interesting proposal for you, if you would hear me out. The Hokage looked towards his fellow Kage with a questioning look on his face. Naruto was in the middle of the field congratulating himself, when suddenly his vision was filled with leaves. Whoosh! In a swirl of leaves, back to back, appeared the missing Genin Sasuke, and his sensei Kakashi. Also Naruto wasn't the only one to change his get-up. Does that whole team have a problem with regular entrances or something? Questioned Kurenai. Sakura was holding her head in her arms. They both have flashy entrances and new clothes. They must have planned this together, she whined. Please, if this is all you have to complain about with your teammates then you don't know how good you have it. Tenten said. I'm not late for my match am I? This is all my sensei's fault. Sasuke directed towards the proctor. Nope Sasuke you're right on time, answered Naruto instead. Sasuke and Kakashi both noticed Naruto standing a couple feet in front of them. Sasuke studies Naruto for a moment, then looked around, his eyes finally landing on a knocked-out Neji being carried away by the medics. So he won his match huh? I guess it is nothing less than expected when Jiraiya-sama asked me for him to train Naruto, mused Kakashi. So you've managed to win your fight huh? Started Sasuke. It would have been disappointing for you to get booted out before you made it to me. Hey you wish idiot, responded Sasuke. Just wait and see Sasuke, shot back Naruto. They both gave each other feral grins, which spoke of the anticipation they had for their upcoming battle, and if the looks on their faces was anything to go by, neither of them would play nice. I guess I'll see you after this match, Naruto said. He started retreating towards the stairs which would lead to where the rest of the participants are. You better not lose, he called back. HMPH, Sasuke didn't though the statement was so pointless, that it didn't even dignify a response. All of the sudden a ninja jumped down and whispered something in Hayate's ear. Hayate listened to the message and nodded his head in verification. It seems we have a last-minute change given directly from Lord Hokage. Hayate stated, stopping everyone in their tracks. Chapter 5. Everyone became restless after seeing the new lineup, especially the ones who were slated to fight. Sasuke is still stuck with Gaara. All that changed for me is that I have to fight the crazy bastard later than expected, thought Naruto. Me and the Naruto are on separate sides of the bracket. Depending on how things go, we will only face each other in the final round. I knew it was too much to hope that they would just opt me out of the competition altogether. If I wasn't going to drop out before, I definitely am now. There is no way in hell I am facing Gaara. The crowd were dealing with the news no better than the Genin, except they took no care in keeping their thoughts to themselves. Quiet down everyone, we will now continue with the second match. Announced the proctor. Will everyone please clear the floor and the next competitors please make your way to the arena. Sasuke and Naruto went up to the participant booth, while their sensei took a seat in the stands. Temari gracefully glided down on her fan, but it seemed there was no plans to join her from her opponent. Shikamaru just stared impassively at the sky, trying to ignore the stares he was getting from everyone. Is it worth going through all this trouble just to maybe get promoted? I'm sure the next exams will be way less challenging considering most of the ones here are from well-known clans, mused Shikamaru. Then again, is it worth dealing with my mother? Which is worse? Before Shikamaru had time to even begin to weigh his options, he was suddenly pushed off the railing from behind by an offending hand. Before he started to fall, he caught a glimpse of orange and yellow. Shikamaru was fast to recover and was able to hit the ground rolling to minimize the damage. Troublesome blondes, he sighed out as he began to stand up, dusting himself off. Now that the decision has been taken from me, I have to beat her. There is no way I am letting a girl beat me. Thus started the longest match many have ever saw, which was simultaneously boring and intriguing. The only thing keeping most of the audience awake was the leftover excitement from the last match, and the growing apprehension for the next ones. It is no surprise that the ending of the match came as a relief to most that was there. Shikamaru should have had no chance at all against that sand chick, thought Naruto. With her long-ranged offense and the proficient way she uses her fan, a strategist support type like Shikamaru should have been overwhelmed in an instant. Obviously, if she was aggressive the entire match she could have won earlier and on her own terms, but the fact Shikamaru was able to do anything at all, much less what he did, is kinda amazing. No matter how much reading I do, I don't think I can be that smart. The rest of those who were actually watching the match were similarly impressed, especially those around Shikamaru's sensei after he revealed the true depth of his students' intelligence. It was clear to many that Shikamaru had much of what's needed to progress to Chunin. All that remained was just the question of how he would handle the responsibility that came with it. The proctor stood again in the center of the arena to make his next announcement. Will Gaara and Kankuro now make their I forfeit? Everyone looked towards the hooded kid with makeup, wondering if he was serious. Despite the staring, the Sand Genin sat down and made no move to explain himself. Displeasure rippled through the crowd, but it was only felt for a moment as all of them quickly remembered who was fighting in the next match. The non-existent match actually came as a blessing in disguise to a majority of the audience because it moved them right along to who they came to see, especially after having to sit through the second fight. Alright, let's see how much Sasuke improved. Okay then, started Hayate. Winner by default, Gaara. Now can Uchiha Sasuke and Aburame Shino please come down to the arena? The crowd became restless as they saw a black-clad Uchiha from the booth to the floor. Shino walked calmly out from the stairs and met his opponent on the ground. The two competitors sized each other up. Well, the Uchiha it was impossible to tell what the Aburame shaded eyes were doing. The proctor looked at both contestants for a moment before he raised his hands. Let the fourth match begin. Instantly Sasuke ran through seals, and shot a large ball of fire at Shino. Shino avoided it only to have to deflect projectiles with a kunai. Sasuke shot off to Shino so fast that Shino only had enough time to block the punch with his arms. The hit still pushed him back a few yards though and bruised him up quite a bit. Sasuke continued his offensive assault, not letting up even a second, while Shino did his best to dodge or block any blows. Sasuke apparently knows that Shino is a thinker too, and he isn't giving him any time to put a plan in place, thought Naruto. Naruto looked at Sasuke and noticed the red tint that he had to his eyes. It seems he knows about the bugs as well, and is making sure he avoids them with his Sharingan. Shino isn't an up-close and personal fighter like Sasuke is making this fight, and will be crushed sooner than later. Naruto could tell Sasuke wasn't going all out as well. Despite what Naruto thought, the match wasn't ever as quick as he expected. He had to give credit to Shino, he was able to draw out the match as long as he did, even though he was clearly outmatched. Shino even almost had caught Sasuke in a trap, by using a bug clone in place of himself, and if he was facing most other Genin he probably would have been able to win. Eventually Shino took one too many hits, and ended the match himself. You could tell he didn't have enough energy to keep up the match much longer. The winner of the match is Uchiha Sasuke, announced the proctor to a crowd of cheers, no doubt pleased to finally see the last Uchiha in action. Personally Naruto thought his match was better than that, but whatever. Naruto let his eyes scan the booth and land on Dosu, his next opponent. Frankly speaking, he was a bit underwhelmed by him. Naruto had to go on and fight Temari, Gaara, and Sasuke. Compared to them, Dosu was a bit lacking. Naruto then let his eyes rest on Dosu's jacket, which was hiding his arms. All he had going for him was his fancy arm, and that really isn't anything special. Naruto decided that he would have to end it fast if he wanted to conserve energy for his more difficult fights. Just before Naruto looked away, the sound Genin met his eyes and gave him a scornful stare, but Naruto just brushed it off. Will Uzumaki, Naruto and Dosu please make their way to the floor? Naruto finished his musings and jumped down into the arena, this time having a much more graceful landing than before, even if it wasn't as cool. Dosu wasn't too far behind Naruto, and within a minute they were facing each other, ready for the match to start. Naruto in a position to react to anything, and Dosu with most of his body still covered by his jacket. If both competitors are ready, said the proctor. Then let the match begin. Before Naruto could even blink, Dosu took his melody arm out and smashed his fist into the ground, sending a shock wave bursting through the surrounding area. Naruto quickly jumped back to avoid the unexpected attack. The ground around the Dosu broke up, and a distinct whistling was heard in the air. For Naruto, there was no doubt that more than just his hearing would have been damaged if he was in range of the impact. Give up now, taunted Dosu. I would hate for the crowd to see your body imploded into tiny pieces. Naruto, now a good distance from Dosu, noticed that something was different about his foe from the last time he saw him. It took him no time at all to see that it was his arm, and how it looked bigger and deadlier than before. I see you have noticed the new features to my arm, remarked Dosu. After my comrade was defeated in the preliminaries, I felt that he could still contribute even if he couldn't manage to get here. Not only can I amplify sound waves, but I can control the amount of air pressure. Then I can combine both and shoot it in a wave that affects all senses. Naruto did see that Dosu now appeared to have a hole in his one hand, which gave credence to his words. Dosu's previous ability added to that of his teammate made a dangerous combination. It probably had the potential to incapacitate many higher-ranked shinobi if even grazed by a blast. It seemed the spectators came up with the same conclusion, because they became rowdy at the thought of another interesting match. Several of the ninjas watching started focusing more on the weapon than who was using it, understanding the possibilities able to be done with it. Kakashi looked down at his student in concern. He wasn't there to witness how Naruto overcame his first fight, but he knew this fight would require a completely different tactic. He wasn't aware how much Naruto had improved, but from what he knows of his Genin, he couldn't help but worry. Naruto, on the other hand, wasn't worried at all. In fact, his plans didn't change at all. He only might just have to be more aggressive than he previously planned. He reached into his leg pouch and took out a single kunai in his hand. That's nice and all, and while I am sure that you could probably hurt me a lot if you get me, Naruto got in position to launch off his feet. You're not going to be able to touch me at all, and with that Naruto sped off straight to Dosu. That idiot, what is he doing? Shouted Sakura. Stupid like always, Sasuke said. Is he really going to try the same thing he did with Neji? Said Tenten. Yes, show your youth, Naruto-kun. Shouted in sync the two green monstrosities. You must be dumber than I thought, said Dosu. He then pointed his arm at the approaching, decapitating echo airwaves. A violent blast of sound was shot towards Naruto at a remarkable speed. Naruto didn't look capable of changing his course in time, but just before the attack met him, Naruto appeared to shift several yards to the right, escaping the blast completely. "What the hell?" yelled Dosu. "Grr, you think you're so fast, eat this." Dosu stated to shoot wave after wave at Naruto, each altering in size and shape to try to catch the speeding shinobi. All of it was in vain though, for Naruto avoided them all, being able to move from side to side at high speeds. To the untrained eyes though, it looked as if he was appearing from one position to the next instead of zigzagging up the arena. "His speed might be faster than mine, Sasuke's," uttered Sasuke and Kakashi simultaneously. Everyone else who have already had a taste of his speed were still surprised at it, just not to the extent of the teacher and student duo. Dosu was getting worried after seeing all of his failed attempts to stop the blonde. He started gathering his chakra for a massive attack since he was desperate. Da. Extreme decapitating echo drill. A giant wall of violent sound distorted the air and launched itself forward. It was so wide that it would be close to impossible to go around it in time. Naruto, seeing the devastating attack, started gathering wind-natured chakra into his right hand and coating the kunai with it. In no time the kunai was engulfed by a glowing layer of blue chakra. Up in the stands, Asuma narrowed his eyes. Just how far did he get in his nature manipulation? He even knows what his chakra nature is and how to use it to this extent. How much has Naruto actually grown in 1 month? Wondered Kakashi. Naruto had no plans to dodge the next wave, but he didn't plan to get high by it either. Naruto unlocked all the seals he had restraining his and now started coating his, wrapping his whole body with a layer of wind so he could decrease air resistance. "This is the end for you." Dosu started laughing. "Did you really think you could, Jay?" Before everyone's very eyes, Naruto disappeared and reappeared a good distance behind Dosu. Dosu eyes widened. What t? Many of the audience shared the same look. Even the majority of ninja there couldn't see all his movements. Even with him just going in a directly straight line. Only the top-level ninja could track Naruto with their eyes. Impossible. Sasuke exclaimed to himself. He himself was in disbelief at the speed Naruto just showed. A loud screeching busted everyone from their astonishment. It whistled throughout the arena, originating from the center of it. Dosu slowly looked down at his melody arm and saw a very thin, long slash going up the entirety of it. The screeching seemed to increase in pitch every second. "Your teammates," Naruto started, while turning towards Dosu, "shouldn't feel so lonely anymore." Dosu's eyes widened and he opened his mouth to say something. Boom. The weapon exploded, taking away one of Dosu's extremities and all his hearing away from him. It was a messy sight. Maybe that was a little cruel, thought Naruto. But then again, he did threaten and hurt my teammates, so I'm not really feeling sympathetic. Naruto looked up at the crowd and noticed that they were stunned quiet. It was either from his show of talent, or the sudden gruesome sight in full display at the center of the floor. "Oops, hee hee." The crowd burst into noise again, roaring loud with excitement. Blood and gore only fuels their lust for entertainment. "He's amazing, I'm not sure how he could do that." "Another splendid match, looks like I might have to change my bets." "It looks like this is turning out to be a wonderful contest." "The winner of the match is Uzumaki Naruto," the proctor unnecessarily said. The stadium was in this state for close to 10 minutes before they were able to get Dosu and clean up the arena. "Will Uchiha Sasuke and Gaara please make their way to the arena, and can all prior competitors clear the floor?" Naruto, who was already back in the booth, got serious when he heard the announcement. "I know he trained with Sensei for a month," Naruto worried. "But is he good enough to stop Gaara?" Gaara and Sasuke were now in the arena, and the match was started. Hopefully, thought Naruto, this won't end bad. God damn it. It ended bad. The match started okay, with Sasuke using his superior speed and skill to overcome Gaara's sand defense and took command of the match. The problem came when Gaara engulfed himself inside of a large sand cocoon ball, and not only was it hard to penetrate, but his sand became more aggressive than usual. Sasuke used some bad lightning move, which Naruto was definitely not jealous of, to get through the sand. There was a scream and then after that things went batshit crazy. Feathers started falling, the Hokage booth exploded in smoke, the sand ninjas started working together with the sound to attack the leaf, and two sand genin took Gaara away to who knows where with Sasuke following on their tails. Naruto kind of wished that the match did ended with Sasuke losing, it would have been a way better outcome than all of this happening. Naruto knew that it would have still happened sooner or later though. Naruto. Naruto turned around to see his sensei calling to him. Naruto ran over to him, where he saw Shikamaru, and Shino standing nearby. Yes, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto listened carefully, you must chase after Sasuke to make sure he doesn't die, and stop whatever the Sand Genin are up to. Kakashi said in the same tone he used when they first faced Zabuza. I am giving you your first S-rank mission, take this extremely serious. He stared at all of us to see if we understood the weight of the situation. Once he was satisfied he said, now hurry. Kakashi then jumped into the battle raging around them. Alright, let's go save the day. Naruto said, pounding his fist into his palm. Shino just pushed his glasses up. Man, what a drag. Naruto was alone again, but at least this time he knew where the Sand siblings were and had caught up to them. Shikamaru opted to stay behind to deal with some ninjas that were following them, and Shino stayed behind to fight with Makeup Boy, leaving him to chase after the rest by himself. He could actually see Sasuke not that far up ahead, and a little beyond that he could see the remaining siblings. It looks as though Gaara is a little unstable though, and considering his normal state, that was really saying something. Naruto quickly jumped ahead until he was neck and neck with Sasuke. What are you doing here, idiot? Glared Sasuke. I came to help stop Gaara, Naruto responded. No you're not, this is my fight. If you want to do something, you can get the blonde girl out of the way. Sasuke, the exams are over, you saw what was happening back in the village, it's bigger than just some petty fight. Don't get in my way, Sasuke started to speed ahead. Before Naruto could follow suit, he had to jump down to the ground to avoid a strong gust of wind. Naruto then jumped up when a wide arch of wind was sent towards him. Naruto landed on a branch of a high tree, and a second later he was joined by the blonde Sand Genin Tamari. Where do you think you're going? Asked the girl. I don't have time for this right now, begged Naruto. Can we please do this later? Oh really, did you think I was going to make it that easy for you? Questioned Tamari as she lifted her fan up. She swung her fan hard and a blast of wind came right at Naruto. Swiftly he made a sign, then he raised his hands. Great breakthrough, both winds met in the middle and collided. The resulting wind blew several branches off trees and almost dislodged the ones they were on. Tamari didn't let up though, she swung her fan 3 more times, but not as strong as the first one. 3 balls of air shot at Naruto fast, but he was prepared. He made a single hand sign again, and slammed his stomach with his hand 3 times, and each time he did a blast of air would come out of his mouth. They just cancelled out the other's attack again. Naruto pulled out several explosive kunai, and he dropped all of them lit. Tamari exclaimed, "What are you Boom?" Naruto was no longer there, and was once more headed towards Sasuke and Gaara. He was using the smoke of the explosion as a distraction and cover. He hoped that it would take a while for Tamari to regain her bearings and catch up. Just as he is thinking that, a harsh wind slams into him, and sends him flying from the branches. Come on, what do you think I am? 5. You are going to have to try better than that, I will. Huh. Poof. What now? Tamari said when she saw the clone disappear. Fire style, fireball jutsu. A huge fireball comes shooting towards her, and she swung a gale of wind at it by reflex. When the attacks hit each other, they exploded and smoke filled the whole area. Tamari was trying to use her fan to dissipate the smoke, but before she could get it all out, something jumped out of the smoke and grabbed her. Naruto slammed her back into a tree and brought her face to his knee. Then she was unconscious. Naruto jumped off the branch, and wiped himself off of the smoke. Aaaaaaaaggghhhh. What is that? It sounded like it came from the direction Sasuke and Gaara went. Shit, I need to get there fast. Naruto saw something giant rising in the distance. It was a little bigger than the boss toad. It looked fearsome from this far. Naruto could only imagine what it was like up close. He had a feeling he would find the people he was looking for over there. He just needed to get over there right now, before that thing crushes them. Naruto felt a hot tug from his navel looking at the monster. I'm finally free. The beast screamed in pleasure. Here I come, baby. That's the end of part 2. If you enjoyed watching Naruto overwhelm everyone with limitless chakra, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Tell me in the comments. Right finger, should Naruto go all out in the next fight, or let the world keep underestimating him? Fox, see you in part 3.